This Hot and Healthy podcast is presented to you by me, Nicole Van Hattem, holistic success coach and best-selling author, and brought to you by the Ginger Camel Media Network. Turn up the volume as we bring you the people and practices that power you to think, eat, thrive. Welcome to another episode of Hot and Healthy. And on today's show, we have another one of the co-authors of the best-selling book, One Crazy Broccoli, on the couch today. Her name is Jacki Woodworth, and she's an ex-drug addict, yoga instructor, and mindfulness practitioner. We're going to delve a little bit into that drug addiction. Welcome to the show, Jacki.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's good to be here.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Now, before we tell everybody what the drug you were addicted to is, I'm just going to say that by giving up the drug, you lost how much weight?
90 pounds.
90 pounds.
Which is, I guess, about 40 kilos.
About 40 kilos. How many dress sizes would that be?
That's 10 dress sizes.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's like a circus tent.
Yeah. That's what I used to wear.
Really? So let's give people out of suspense. What were you addicted to?
My drug of choice was sugar.
Right.
Yeah. In particular, refined sugars, of course.
Okay, so some people might find that a bit confronting that you referred to sugar as a drug. What would make it a drug?
Well, the addictive qualities of it. The research shows that sugar is actually more addictive than cocaine. The sad part is that it's also much more easily available.
Right, and cheap.
And very cheap, and on every street corner.
And made very pretty and advertised and marketed
Absolutely.
very well.
Yeah.
Even to children.
Especially to children.
You know what, we should have done this interview without saying what it was and just saying to people how it's marketed, how it's so dangerous, and then surprising them with sugar.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a drug.
I've said for years that the day will come, and I think it's soon, when soda pop cans will have warnings on them like cigarette packages have now.
Wow.
Beware, this product can be dangerous for your health.
Do you think that that would make a difference?
I like to hope that every little thing could make some difference, yeah. But I think it really has to start young, because the addiction, in my case, started really young. And oftentimes it's with the best of intentions. You know, we love our loved ones with good food.
Right.
And so
how did the addiction begin then?
I grew up on a farm, very close to my grandmother, who was a wonderful cook. And yeah, she just loved me with food. And I think it became a very symbiotic relationship, because I loved to eat the food that she cooked, and she loved the appreciation of someone who would, you know, want more and more. And I realized now, not at the time, but much, much later, that I really didn't have an off switch. So I would just gorge. You know, I was one of those kids who could eat and eat and eat, and in particular sweet things. And so over time, you know, as I became a teenager, of course I was getting bigger and bigger and heavier and less happy with myself. And so along with the sugar addiction also comes the body image issues, and then the really negative self-perception. And that just grew over time.
Creates a negative cycle.
Absolutely, yeah. It feeds itself, if you will, yeah.
So there's two sides to the sugar addiction. One is the I feel bad about myself and the body image, and therefore I'll eat more sugar to sort of satisfy this internal, I don't know, feeding need.
Emptiness.
Yeah, emptiness.
Yeah.
And to get a little bit of a high, because it's a drug and it does give us a high, but it also gives us the crash and the low and the search for more. And then there's the bacteria side. So the sugar feeds bacteria in the gut, which then the gut bacteria sends out the message, give me more sugar, I'm hungry. So partially it's a conscious emotional thing, and partially it's a gut bacteria imbalance, which says give me more, and not just in the form of sweets, but it could be alcohol, it could be carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So how did you turn this around?
Well, you know, it's interesting. When I moved to Doha, I think for those who have kind of addictive personality types, there's never just one. And so I was also a bit addicted to just being busy. I had young children, I worked full time. And when we came to Doha, all of a sudden, I wasn't working for the first time in my life, and started to kind of turn inwards. And I like to think of it as a bit of a coming home, and it was a really slow process initially, just sort of beginning to recognize I don't like what this body looks like, but I also really don't like what I do to myself on a daily basis. The kinds of things that I would say to myself, really self-deprecating, and then just feeling continually more and more lousy. You know, I was trying to take care of my weight issue with exercise, and that definitely it was not a good combination. And there was a breaking point in about 2007 when I was seeing a doctor. I was having trouble with my knee, and she was lovely. You know, she was helpful, and X-rays and anti-inflammatories and massage, and we tried everything. And finally, one day when I went in to see her, she leaned across her desk and she said, "Quite frankly, my dear, if you don't do something about your weight, this will never get better." And it was like a cloud of denial was pierced, but my initial reaction was anger. How dare she? Who does she think she is? She can't talk to me that way. That went on for about 3 days. You know, the denial can be quite profound and quite heavy. And then it started to, you know, it's like a cloud cover that starts to dissipate. And I realized, oh my God, she's right. I had young children. I started thinking about, I might not see grandchildren. If this continues, I'll be diabetic, I'll have heart issues. I probably won't live to be an old woman. And if I do, I certainly won't be a healthy one. And that just didn't fit with kind of who I thought I was. It was almost like an eating disorder sometimes can give you a misperception of yourself, that body perception image. And in some ways mine was backwards. I exercised a lot. I fancied myself to be healthy, but also knew that I was heavy and unattractive. So I found a group, a 12-step program called Overeaters Anonymous, and I started going to that.
And that was here in Qatar?
That was here in Doha.
Do you know
years
if it still
ago.
exists?
It does, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And if folks want to know more about it, they can contact me.
Yeah.
That was my first step, and coming into contact with others who had this disease was incredible, because I really thought I suffered alone, I struggled alone, and I ate in secret. That was the big thing. Chocolate bars were my main drug of choice, and I would make up stories like, "Honey, we're out of milk, I need to go to the store to get more milk for the kids' breakfast," buy a half a dozen chocolate bars and drive around crying and eating. And, you know, just miserable and saying, you know, tomorrow I'll start the next diet tomorrow. What I've realized is that is the eating disorder. It's that disordered thinking that we're just fooling ourselves with. And so meeting other people who would say, yeah, we know that.
I do that too.
We share this language.
That's
yeah.
excellent. So finding your tribe and
Exactly.
finding safety to be able to be yourself within that tribe.
Yeah.
How did the mindfulness come about?
Well, so as that journey continued, it's interesting as you start to feel a little bit better, you start to explore other things. As I was coming home to my own body, I started to feel like I wanted to move in different ways. So I found yoga and took a yoga teacher training program here at Yama Yoga with Valerie Jeremijenko. And then through that, discovered also mindfulness. So in my profession, I'm a social worker. And so through some professional development, I discovered mindfulness at a conference, and it just made so much sense to me. This idea that we can come home to what happens inside of ourselves. I'm very extroverted. I spend a lot of my time outside myself, really attending to others and the environment around me, food. But this coming home was a really interesting thing for me. And so mindfulness affords us that opportunity to just be with ourselves in a non-judgmental way and notice. So with the food addiction, it's an emotional, kind of an underdeveloped emotional state, if you will. And so things like anything that's uncomfortable, anything, pain, fear, anger, any of the uncomfortable emotions, we don't like to feel them. So we will use our drug of choice. In my case, it was sugar. And so I'm stuffing those emotions with sugar rather than learning that, you know what, I actually have the capacities within me to tolerate these things. They might not be nice, they might not be comfortable, but this is life. You know, Brene Brown says it so lovely, when I try to limit the discomforts of life, I also inadvertently begin to limit the joys of life, and my life can become really narrow. And so to begin to embrace the fact that, okay, there's discomfort, there's anger, I'm mad at my husband, I'm ticked at my kids, whatever it might be. But I can work with this rather than turning to a chocolate bar.
I don't need to feel this, I don't want to feel this, therefore I'll stuff my emotions down with food.
Exactly. And I think our world is very much about that nowadays. Very much, you know, the bad things we don't want to feel. We'll go to our phones, we'll turn to our laptops.
Work a little bit more.
Yeah, stay up all night, sleep deprived, all of those things, rather than feel the feelings that make us human.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jackie.
My pleasure.
And thank you for sharing your story in the book as well.
An honor. It's great.
And for those people who'd like to find out more about Jackie, have a look in the notes underneath this episode. And of course, get a copy of the best-selling book, One Crazy Broccoli. And if you want to know about Overeaters Anonymous or the mindfulness practice, then get in touch with me at nicolevanhatton.com. And be sure to tune in to another episode of Hot and Healthy.